1. We'd like to get started. If you'd like to take a seat, please do so now. We really appreciate all of you being here today. I'm Deputy Superintendent Danielle Shockey from the Indiana Department of Education. I want to welcome you all to the second of 3 public hearings regarding the K-12 English Language Arts and Mathematics Standards revision. We have some Indiana State Board members with us here today, and I'd like to welcome each of those individually and introduce you. To my right, we have Dan Elsner, Carrie Wicker, Sarah O'Brien. And to my left, we have Gordon Henry and Andrea Neal. We also have members of the CC staff, the Center for Education and Innovation, and that would be Dr. Molly Chamberlain behind me, and she's also acting as our moderator tonight. And then Shane Hatchett at our registration desk and Sarah Rossier have also helped out tonight. We appreciate their work. Finally, we have members of the Department of Education staff who have been working on this process, and they're here to do some note-taking, as well as to help behind me. We have Dr. Michelle Walker, Director of Assessment, Bill Reed, Jim Mirabelli, Aaron Thompson, and John Wolf. And our technology team behind me is Alan Berry, and back here, Garen Griss. Thank you to all of them for making this happen tonight so flawlessly. We will close public comment at 6, or registration for public comment at 6:30 with the goal of ending at 7 p.m. We do have a few instructions. These instructions are also on the PowerPoint above my head, so if people come in behind us after we've started, if you would just direct their attention up there, that would be helpful. You have a sign-in, and you will have an opportunity to speak, and you'll be asked to complete the public comment form in advance, which you received as you entered. If you haven't already, you can hand those to Molly Chamberlain, the moderator behind me. The purpose of the hearing tonight is for the State Board of Education to hear public testimony on draft, and I want to emphasize the word draft. This is a process, and part of this process to having the final standards for English Language Arts and Math, which were posted on February 19th on the DOE and the State Board of Education websites. This hearing is limited to standards only. It's not a hearing about curriculum, textbooks, or assessments. Public comment on topics outside of standards will be accepted at other forums on future dates. Whenever possible, we would ask that you please provide specific feedback on the standards that will inform our ongoing work for the English Language Arts and Mathematics Evaluation Panel's work and the College and Career Ready Panel's work that will still happen after the close of public comment. During the testimony, if you would, please state your name and provide your feedback on the standards posted online. Please limit your comments to the draft standards, and each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Time limits will be strictly enforced. Dr. Chamberlain, the moderator, will be our timekeeper. She'll notify you when there's 1 minute remaining so you can begin concluding your remarks. If you would, please be respectful from speakers who may have opinions different than your own. We do want to make you aware, since we won't have time to say goodbye to some of you as you will leave after you comment, that after today, these standards will stay online through March 12th at 11 p.m., so you may continue to submit written feedback at any time between now and March 12th. I do understand that we have at least one State Board member who'd like to make a comment.
I'll just be very brief. I just wanted to personally thank you on behalf of the board for your attendance today, and I'd especially like to thank the people who came with your young children. I know that's difficult, so thank you for being here and making your voice heard. I'd specifically like to ask you, we have over 100 pages of draft standards here, and so it would most help us if you could be as specific as possible as to addressing the specific standards before us, the draft standards before us. That would be most helpful in your comments. So again, thank you very much for being here. We greatly appreciate your participation.
All right, with that, I think we are ready to begin with our first speaker.
Bonnie Fisher.
My name is Bonnie Fisher, and I'm here on behalf of Global Education Reforms Watch as well as myself. If the English Revised Standards are an improvement, I don't see it. The document is essentially the same as the CCSS. Here are 3 criticisms which pertain to this new version as to the CCSS. First, the stated purpose, college and career readiness, is a hoax, a triple one at that. First, a single type of preparation for two different ends doesn't work because college and a job after high school are different. Claims that college entry is no different from a job are based on the premise that dumbing down higher education is going to happen. Second, this objective, representing corporate capitalism's interest, is assumed to be the only purpose for a human being. The great teachers, from Socrates to Quintilian to Alcuin to Erasmus and Thomas More, and to our own John Cheever, Emma Willard, and Caleb Mills, would be appalled by this meretricious conceit. I am, and I don't understand why you are all settling for it. Third, the document, like the CCSS, is rooted in the assumption that corporate capitalism that the child is a human resource, a future worker only, and that the teacher is to function as a job coach, an assembly line supervisor, and that the school is a factory producing human widgets for Lilly, Cummins, Honda, GM, whatever. A human resource, lathed to specifications like an automobile part. Is that what you see when you look at your own children? If not, why do you think that that is all right for other people's children? The second criticism comes from Suji Shin's statement in the IDOE press release of February 13, 2014. Ms. Shin declared that the new document embodies what Indiana wants and is important. That's bogus. Citizens don't want behavior, they want subject matter. And I emphasize that there is no academic discipline, no subject in this document, despite the use of subject names. Instead, there are IDs, informational data points, turned into skills to be acquired through training. Each is separate, each is isolate, and there is no way that a subject can be mastered on a need-to-know bit of informational data. So let's be honest about the document and the CCSS. They are not standards at all. They are specifications for worker training. And if you and the Education Roundtable accept this new version of the CCSS, you should rename yourselves to something like Board of Basic Worker Training, for this is not education. Thank you.
Which microphone? This one? Ron Gore, Covington, Indiana. I have some general comments as you make your last standards. In America today, there are over 16 million children being raised in poverty. In a study reported in the book, Meaningful Differences, it was found that children in poverty hear only half as many words spoken to them by age 3 as average. As a result, these children had less ability to learn in later years. The Federal Department of Health and Human Services has concluded that Head Start has failed to help poverty children, and this is confirmed in another study, the 1960s Perry Preschool Project. In the Perry Project, poverty kids were taught only selected materials by college-trained certified teachers. By age 40, 28% of the Perry kids had served time in jail, 32% of those for violent crimes, and 59% of the Perry kids had received welfare. Head Start and the Perry Project failed because poverty infants are not properly prepared for preschool education. These data show that if we do not solve the problem of infant education, all other activities have no meaning. We need to quit wasting money and time on progress standards, teacher evaluation, and frankly, Common Core, and focus our attention on infant education. While that will be a complex task, it is a task Americans can and need to accomplish. The ending of poverty will be the reward for that effort.
Thank
I'm
you.
done.
Thank you. Kristen Otis.
I stand this way. Okay. Thank you for allowing me to talk today. This weekend, I decided to look over the Common Core standards that were posted on the internet. And I only got through kindergarten and first grade. And my kids are currently in 6th grade, and they've taken the Iowa test. And they've come ahead 2.5 grades to 1.5 grades ahead of what the normal is. So I've been talking to parents in public school and been trying to figure out what the difference is. Why are my kids ahead? And so I'm a business analyst by trade, and I've been raising my kids, so I stopped working a while ago, but I put together a spreadsheet of what I see the differences between the standards that I'm used to and what a first grader needs to know, and Hewitt Homeschooling Resources and Abeka. And there was huge differences in what my kids know in first and kindergarten and what is required with Common Core. So I wanted to submit that to you guys because I think it's very important that kids have a strong foundation to be able to read and learn mathematics. And the big difference I saw is in kindergarten, they were learning to know what a verb is and what a noun is instead of learning the basic phonic sounds. I thought that was not an appropriate requirement in Common Core. The other thing that I saw that I did not think was appropriate was they started phonics in first grade. And I know that some people started in first grade, but my kids started in kindergarten and started at 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years old. And my daughter, actually, she tested in high school for English. So I think that one of the things that you need to look at is phonics at an early age, starting that, just incorporating those sounds, just a basic sound that they know by heart, and whether it's a song or whatever. And then with mathematics, I saw a lagging there as well. Double multiplication up to 100, adding, that was not required in first grade where my curriculum was. So if it was 20 plus 42, that was not required in Common Core, and it was required in my standards. So I thought the standards were behind a grade, and I just wanted to let you guys know that. Thanks.
Thank you. So as you consider the standards, I'd just like you to think about the following. Any great company, any great organization becomes great because they know where they're going, they have a direction. As I read the standards, it's a bunch of little bit of tidbits and facts. I want this, I want that, I want those. And I'm just challenging you to come and publish some type of, this is what we want to produce. Because I would agree with the first speaker, it seems like what we want to produce are factory workers and not thinkers. And if we could state that, if we could say, here's what we want to produce. After grade 12, this is it. We had to pull our kids out of school because we think it's so pathetic, and we homeschool. And we've seen the difference is unbelievable because we have a goal, we have a purpose. And our kids have a goal and a purpose that they can get behind. Can we come up with a goal and a purpose that we can then show that whatever standard we come up with supports that? And as a state, we can not just support each little individual standard, but that they take us to the goal. Because if we're missing and we have the wrong goal up here, no matter what we discuss down at the standard level is kind of noisy and confused, as it would be with any organization or any company. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Aaron Tuttle.
Thank you. I would just like to address specifically within the math in grades K through 5. I know one of the main issues that opponents had about Common Core was that it included the standard algorithm too late. Like high-performing countries, it's generally a couple years earlier than the Common Core. And so when I was reading the new standards, I noticed that the standard algorithm, the wording has actually been removed. Instead of the standard algorithm, they have the words, a standard algorithmic approach. And while they sound very similar, they actually mean very different things. And I have this printed out for you to keep. Just in something as simple as addition, the standard algorithm is just you line it in columns, you borrow and you carry. In the new standards, an algorithmic approach allows for all of these different methods to satisfy the standard. And so as someone who opposed Common Core for many reasons, we feel like the lack of addressing this is still a problem that has not been resolved. Also, I will clarify, in 5th grade, they do still have the word the standard algorithm. The standard is fluently multiply double-digit whole numbers using the standard algorithm with understanding. See, in the old Common Core and in other sets of standards, it normally doesn't have that with understanding. What that's going to require is that if you do the standard algorithm and you get it correctly, you don't have to explain your work or show your understanding. We also think that is still a problem, especially at the 5th grade level. They should be able to just perform the procedure without having to justify how they got there. There's some other reasons in here that I'll just let you read. Basically, the development of fluency with operations still does not have the progression that's needed. Thank you.
Heather Crossan?
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to speak quickly, and rather than to go into a lot of detail, I thought that I would share with you a preliminary report that we received yesterday from a mathematician, Zev Werman. Again, I am not an educator, I'm a concerned parent, and throughout this entire debate, I have valued the research and opinions of those who are. And so just to give you a little bit background on Zev Werman, he was with the U.S. Department of Education under George W. Bush and is currently an executive with Monolithic 3D Incorporated. In 2010, he served on the California Academic Content Standards Commission that evaluated the suitability of Common Core for California. He's also done a great deal of other work which is available. So we contacted Zev and we asked him to please take a look at this new set of standards as we were under a severe time crunch. And you've all got copies, but I'll just point out some of the things that he found that bothers me. He said the first thing that jumps out is how numerous the standards are in this draft. He said they sometimes seem slimmer than they are because most of the examples and ancillary texts were omitted. Yet if one counts them, it is clear that they represent the return to the mile-wide and inch-deep standards, the very thing I heard we were to be getting away from. He has it broken down, and you can see, as he says, it is clear that the drafters added a lot and took out very little. Consequently, this draft suffers from a large bloat. He goes on to explain that the other thing that jumps out is the addition of a 9th mathematical process standard. The Common Core, as you know, had only 8, and they are left unchanged in this draft. A third thing of concern is that although they've made some, he does note some of the things he finds, the improvements that were made, so I won't address those, but they're there for you to see. But he goes on to say, it delays fluency, as Aaron stated. In other words, this draft dumbed downs further the already low expectations of Common Core for arithmetic fluency. He says in summary, this draft did not focus strongly enough on improving the glaring weaknesses of Common Core standards, but instead made minor and sometimes negative changes and piled a whole lot of new content on top of already massive Common Core. This draft is more bloated than the Common Core and immeasurably more bloated than the 2009 Indiana draft standards. And so I hope you'll look at this thoroughly. I understand a lot of work went into it, and I appreciate that, but from all the feedback we're receiving thus far, it seems as though Common Core has been taken and a lot thrown on top of it. And if we're truly to have the highest set of standards in the nation, I hope you'll do your due diligence. Thank you.
Amy Marsh.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Amy Marsh. I'm here representing the Indiana Chamber of Commerce and have been an educator in Central Indiana for 17 years. As you've requested, I have very specific suggestions that may help improve upon the draft set of standards released last week. First suggestion, or concern rather, is the standards evaluation panels reviewed all standards using a self-developed baseline definition for college and career readiness. This pliable definition did not include the elimination of remediation at the post-secondary level. The viability of all standards rests upon this definition of college and career readiness. I would recommend the inclusion of a measurable post-secondary performance within this definition. For example, readiness enables students to be able to perform on day one in college or career without the need for additional instruction. ACT, the College Board, and the national guru on college and career readiness, David Connolly, all have valuable, tested definitions for college and career readiness that may be used in this context. Each of these includes student performance metrics. My second major concern, while each standard was grouped by content area and strand within the content area, further clarity and organization needs to be developed within these strands. Indiana's previous standards had anchor standards that would be consistent at all grade levels. For example, determine central ideas or themes of a text and analyze their development would anchor this reading concept at all grade levels. Students developmentally would be able to do more with this anchor at higher grade levels. Such an organizational structure would enable teachers, parents, and students to appreciate their progression of learning. I understand what has been made public is a draft, and revisions and clarifications are to be made. I also understand this is an extremely tight timeline to comply with House Enrolled Act 1427. Within this timeline, I'm hopeful you'll both reach out to standards experts for input and evaluation, and you will inform the educational community of the impact these changes will have within their classrooms just 5 months from now. The Indiana Chamber is ready to help you with these efforts to ensure the students of the state have access to the most rigorous, high-quality standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Shauna Finley.
The new draft standards have taken a focused and coherent set of standards and made them disjointed and unviable. There are way too many standards in a grade level for teachers to be able to help students achieve mastery of the content. We have suffered from overcrowded standards for too long. Let's not forget Marzano's finding that it would take from grades K through 22 to teach Indiana's previous A-rated standards. To take the best of 3 or 4 sets of standards and merge them actually makes this even more troublesome for teachers and students. In addition, several very strong elements from the various standards from which this draft has been created have been eliminated. To correct this, I have the following suggestions regarding mathematics. In grade 3, under Computations and Operations, Standard 1 should be rewritten as fluently add and subtract within 1,000, using strategies and algorithms based on place value, properties of operations, and or the relationship between addition and subtraction with understanding. The way that standard is worded helps ensure that students actually develop number sense, And then moving forward, you'll notice that I've added the standard algorithm at each of the following grades. In 4th grade, under number sense, I would add the addition of a standard, fluently add and subtract multi-digit whole numbers using the standard algorithm. In grade 5, under computations and operation, I would add an additional standard, fluently multiply multi-digit whole numbers using the standard algorithm. And in grade 6, under number sense and computation, standard 12, I would reword to say fluently divide multi-digit whole numbers using the standard algorithm and make reasonable estimates. Also in grade 6, under number sense and computation, standard 15, I would reword to say solve real world and mathematical problems involving addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of positive fractions and decimals using the standard algorithm. Explain why a particular operation was used in a given situation. In addition, the General Assembly has always required the Indiana standards be world-class, clear, concise, jargon-free, and by grade level. The fact that the high school standards are not by grade level is a significant barrier to getting high-quality feedback. There are 139 algebra standards, for example. We don't know what courses those standards would fall into. Once the committees have divided those standards into courses, another feedback period needs to be provided to the field so that we can ensure there is focus, coherence, and rigor in each of the courses. I don't really have time to address the English language arts standards, so I will be submitting comments online. But there are 2 standards that have been removed from the high school standards that are very concerning to me. This draft eliminates the standard that says delineate and evaluate the reasoning of seminal U.S. texts.
We encourage you to submit your comments online. Chris Brock.
Hi. Okay. As a concerned parent of 3 children, the Common Core standards for math are currently written to be lower than our old Indiana state standards were, and this would not allow our high school teens to take calculus in high school before going on to college, and this sets our U.S. students behind other countries in the math standards and learning, and why not make our standards higher rather than lower than the other countries? The Common Core standards are 2 years behind the old Indiana state standards, and I would recommend adding to the math standards to increase math skills rather than to decrease them.
Amy Nichols.
Hello, my name is Amy Nichols. I am a math specialist and I work at a private school, and I've been tutoring for 15 years, children of all levels of math. I even go up through college calculus. I have some adults I help. I have preschoolers I help. I chose to review the draft of the algebra standards. Right away, I was very confused because the draft was not divided up into Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 courses, much like the Common Core standards. Also, where were the pre-calculus standards? I saw algebra, geometry, statistics, discrete math, and calculus. Discrete math, although it's a higher level math course, does not prepare students for calculus. Neither does the small amount of trigonometry in the algebra sequence, even if it were augmented by whatever trigonometry is in the geometry standards. I doubt students could go right to calculus with this progression. I was pressed to make the time to review this draft of the algebra standards, as I'm sure many of the speakers here today were. Teachers whose opinions regarding these standards are so valid and important would be hard-pressed to make the time to dig into these standards and give you solid feedback, especially given the short time period between the release of the draft standards and this review process. Why are we so rushed, especially when we already drafted standards in 2009 that have been vetted and approved? My opinion is that this draft of standards is going in the wrong direction. Nearly every Common Core algebra standard is included in this draft of standards. Out of the 139 standards, 23% are from the Indiana Common Core standards, and 50% of these algebra standards come word for word from the Common Core math standards. That includes all the ambiguity and fuzziness that's problematic in the lower grade levels as well. Only 20% of these new draft standards originate from the 2009 standards that are pretty amazing content-wise and more concretely written than the Common Core standards. These draft of standards is a confusing mess and appears cobbled together with no clear direction for algebra teachers. The teachers are tied to these standards. Has their input been solicited? I'm talking about getting input from teachers in the classroom day after day working these standards, not standards writers, not people with PhDs. I'm talking about teachers. Very few teachers in the classroom doing this math have PhDs. If you want really great new math standards, you need to hand them over to the math teachers for their input. This draft of algebra standards is also uncategorized, so it was difficult to determine if necessary content was covered, especially since the original content of the Common Core Algebra 2 class was so weak. Nearly every algebra standard in Common Core were included in this draft of standards. Thank you.
Caitlin Hannon. You'll have
Hi, good afternoon. Great, thanks. My name is Caitlin Hannon. I'm the Executive Director of Teach Plus. I work with teachers, mostly here in Indianapolis, on all kinds of issues that impact their experience in the classroom. One thing I'll say is that I currently don't have any teachers here because the majority of them are out doing the work that actually has to be done to serve kids every day. So, for example, the teachers who teach an IPS, many of them are there for another hour. So the fact that you're not hearing from teachers at these is not a reflection of their disinterest, but is a reflection of what they're doing every day to support students. The teachers that I work with will be providing specific feedback through the website, so I wanted to give you that. And I also wanted to say that I think that there needs to be a specific mechanism for teacher-specific feedback. So as I've gone to these hearings, the majority of our teachers testified in support of Common Core at the State House. However, unfortunately, that was often at a time that the folks who are decision makers were no longer in the room because they chose to leave. So what I would encourage you to do is find mechanisms through which teachers can specifically give feedback on the standards, not generally, but give the specific feedback that you're seeking. I just want to say, as a former high school English teacher, I know that standards don't prepare students, teachers prepare students, and therefore whatever the standards are, the teachers in Indianapolis that I know I work with will make them work and will serve students as well as they can. I think it's really important, however, that the specific feedback that you're looking not come necessarily from parents, as much as I love parents. They're not trained in the pedagogy of instructing students. So I would encourage you to seek feedback specifically from educators who are in the classroom every day. Thank you.
If we have any additional speakers, please sign up at the registration table and please bring your forms to me. Hi. Thank you. Thank you. Diane Finney? No, I agree.
Yeah. My name is Diane Finney. I am a parent, but I am also have a teaching degree. I was a substitute teacher for many years in all kinds of subjects. I am also a very avid reader, and my concern is for the English standards, the amount of the basic literature that has been taken out for informational text, for just other things rather than reading the good stories of literature. I am a firm believer in good literature, in the fact that our children learn a lot of relationships, how to get along with others, learn how to think for themselves, learn just how to work on relationships, come through the reading of stories. And when we leave out many of these basic stories, then we take out a big part of their heritage and a big part of the way that they learn. I'm also concerned with sometimes even the methods that some of the teachers use, rather than just let the students read the books and give their own comments on actually reading them, rather than the standards that call for picking the stories apart when that isn't necessarily the intention of every book that has been read, but needs to be just read for pleasure and for what they can read. And as I said, I am a very avid reader of history, of literature, of fiction stories, of all kinds of different books, and I believe that I have become a very well-educated person as a result of it. But I attribute most of this to the fact of the things that I read in school, and many of the terms that we hear today come as a result of what we have read in times past. Some of the phrases that have used, some of our cultural literacy, maybe so to speak, that comes through the reading of our great literature. And I just would ask that you would go over those standards very carefully and take out some that are not necessary. Let the other subjects be taught in the other classes, but concentrate on good literature in the literature classes. Thank you very much.
Diane Scott. Sorry, I didn't let you get very far.
It's all right.
You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'm going to move a chair. My name is Diane Scott, and I'm Director of Curriculum for Lebanon Community School Corporation. My superintendent, I got his blessing before I came today. It is not like me to speak out in a situation like this, but I've been an Indiana educator now this is my 22nd year. I was a special ed teacher, a regular ed teacher, a building principal for quite some time. The last 8 years I've been a director of curriculum. Since 2010, when the Common Core state standards were adopted, we took it very seriously in our school district, knowing that we had to prepare our students to get ready for the new wave of state testing that was coming. That's what drives us, our work, to be honest with you, in the public school arena these days. And the last 4 summers, we have had sessions in the summer. That's when we do our curriculum work. And the framework that our curriculum is developed around obviously has to be the standards. We start each session with a chair in the front of our room. That chair represents the students, our K-12 students. I always talk to our teachers about having that golden ticket, which is a diploma. That's what we're striving for with all of the things that we do to meet the needs of our students. Right now, we have second graders that came to us in kindergarten. And the only standards those students had in kindergarten were the Common Core state standards. I'm not a big advocate for Common Core. That's not why I'm here. That was the roadmap that was laid out for us that we were following. First grade, Common Core. Then we decided as a state that we're going to put this pause on. So now they're in second grade, knowing that in third grade they will take a state assessment that will be most likely I-STEP plus for this 1 more year. And so the teachers this year in second grade need to do a blend of Common Core and Indiana academic standards in order to give those students the opportunity to learn what they're going to be assessed on in third grade. We had a teacher retire at the end of the year. She was a resistor, but she participated in some of that summer work. And she said, Diane, mark my words, this will change. You won't be doing this very long, I bet you. And I said, well, if I have anything to do about it, we're going to stick with this. Because in my role, I'm the cheerleader for them. I have to bring those resistors on board, have the teachers change that mindset. We dedicate resources, time, effort, and mindset changes to whatever's laid out for us. We've been following that transition plan the best we can, trying to make sure with everything we do, we keep the mind of that student in our right in front of us. My basic request to you is, I put it under grade appropriate because that's the closest I can come under your parameters, is to do what's appropriate for all of our students. And these shifts are very difficult for the people back in the field trying to do the work. And the stakes are quite high, as you know, for teacher evaluation and for school accountability and for student learning first and foremost. Thank you.
Stephanie Engelman.
Thank you. You'll forgive me, this is entirely off the cuff today. I simply heard the comments of a woman who is an educator and who referred to the fact that as parents, we do not know the pedagogy of teaching children. I'm a parent. I have 4 children in grades 4th, 2nd, and kindergarten, as well as a 3-year-old. I would argue that I am their primary educator. I send them to school for 7 hours a day, but they come home to me for their primary education. I support what those teachers teach, and when they come home with fuzzy math, when they come home with homework that I have to sit and try to figure out before I can possibly teach it to them. I know of one school system in the area that has started having classes to teach the parents how to teach their kids how to do this math. This math has taken the focus off of mastery, and instead my children are learning 2, 3, 4 different ways to do a simple math problem that you and I, when we were in school, learned one standard algorithm, and then we perfected it. We did it again and again and again until we had it like that. Today, our children are not doing that. They're learning several different methodologies, and then they practice the standard algorithm a few times before moving on to the next concept. It is leading to our children not having mastery of these skills. It's confusing them when they have to take an I-STEP test and they forget what they've learned a few months ago because they never mastered it. This is really harming our children. I have bright children, and I have a college education. I consider myself to be a bright individual, and yet we sit around my kitchen table in the afternoons and we scratch our heads sometimes trying to figure out how to do this math. And when I see them come back to something that they learned a month ago and they pound their fist on the table and say, "Mommy, I don't remember how to do this. I don't know. I hate math." I look at my bright child who I know could be exceptional at math, and I am frustrated as my child's primary educator. I am frustrated and my children are frustrated, and I would like to go back to a more classical system that gets away from this Common Core methodology where we have to learn 5 different ways to teach one concept. Let's teach them the same way that people have been taught for hundreds, thousands of years. It's worked for so long. Why do we have to do something new and different? I'm a parent, I am an educator, and we parents deserve to be heard and listened to. Thank you.
Suzanne Sherby.
I'm here today also as a concerned parent, and ultimately I'm here to urge you to reject this draft and to let you know that I'm disappointed at the cavalier attitude that seems to have been taken toward this. I know the comments today were supposed to be specific to the standards, but the rushed nature certainly has not given most parents a time frame which will allow us to digest what's happened here. But as I think you all know, all of this furor has arisen because parents like myself saw what came home in the backpack. We read what experts had to say, and we came to the conclusion that something was wrong. This totally appears to be a repackaging of everything that we noticed was wrong. And I want you to know that parents are not going to be fooled by that. I truly urge you to reject this draft and to take the time to come up with a more reasonable process to allow real expertise. I'm told that the best standards in the country weren't even in the room when this was written. It's hard to understand how something so important could have been given such a short time frame. And from everything I've read about the product, it shows the cavalier nature that was taken to it. So I urge you to reject these and to take it more seriously so that parents like myself can sleep over what our children are doing in school. I thank you for your time.
Connie Eckert.
Thank you. Thanks for having us here today. We've heard about all the holes in Common Core, and it appears to be a sinking ship. Parents did not ask for a broken, sinking ship made by outsiders outside of Indiana. Rather than try to make do with the sinking ship by patching it up, wouldn't it be wiser to abandon the ship and start with a new ship? I recommend that we help students return to a classic education, one that teaches students how to think, teaches history, constitutional studies, classic literature, and personal responsibility. That way they can invent and create and become independent leaders for freedom and prosperity. Common Core is an injustice because we didn't make it, and we need better for our American children. So I hope that you'll reconsider and come aboard with the classic education. Thank you.
Sue Lyle. Have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. English language arts standards in their current form are uninspiring, monotonous, and lack coherent vision for a rich, literature-filled curriculum. They reduce the magical experience of reading to a seemingly endless series of Pavlovian ask-and-answer exercises that ultimately may keep children from falling in love with the characters and stories of great literature. Much like the Common Core, they focus more on what students should do rather than what they should know. Some of the problems include there are too many standards throughout, and this is especially pronounced in grade 1, and I actually have a grandson that is in grade 1, and I've seen some of this. They lack the definitions and examples teachers need to implement effectively. Good reading should be the focus of any language arts curriculum, yet there are no exemplar texts listed at any grade level. In fact, there is almost no mention of classic literature or the enduring value such literature may impart. Some skill sets are improperly grouped under the language category. Graphically, it is extremely difficult to follow the sequence of skills from grade level to grade level because standard IDs do not correspond. This lack of clear sequencing makes thorough analysis of the standards challenging, and it would certainly make it difficult for teachers in a school building to cross-check with their own scope and sequence documents. At all levels, jargon-filled reading comprehension goals should be replaced by quantifiable oral and silent reading goals. Many standards are repeated almost word for word at different grade levels. In a properly sequenced standards document, one could assume incorporation of previously listed standards. There is an unjustifiable overemphasis on informational text. At a majority of grade levels, information standards are more numerous than literature standards. I appreciate your all's time on this. I would just ask that you would take all these testimonies into account and use some of these that have been given to you to further review these. Thank you.
Probably won't take that much time. As a former president of the Indiana Republican Assembly, We represent one of the largest GOP volunteer organizations in America. And at the national level, the organization has condemned Common Core. I happen to be a co-host of a national radio show, and we have been able to, over the last year, have on our show a number of the experts who spoke here in Indiana at the Senate hearings: Emmett McGroarty, Sandra Stotsky, former superintendent of Texas Schools, Jane Robbins, and others. And my comment is just this: Common Core appears to be just that, common. And I think the state of Indiana and the citizens deserve exceptionalism when it comes to standards for our youth. And so I urge you, having heard, I'm a little bit like Nancy Pelosi, I've not read your draft, but I urge you to not just replicate Common Core standards or layer on top of that. I urge you to go back and fully recognize the standards that existed prior to, and then incorporate the very best for our students. We want exceptional students, not common students. And I thank you for the time very much.
Is it Megan or Megan? Megan Love.
Hello, my name is Megan Love, and I am a concerned parent, and although I am trained in pedagogy, it has no relevance on my concern for the education of not only my own children, but of those of the entire state. I am a product of the public schools in Indiana, and I went to a state school for college, and I have a degree in secondary education, language arts, and I believe I received a very solid education within Indiana. And I believe a large part of that was due to the freedom the communities were able to have and to develop programs that blessed their community and that led their students to excel. Most of my concerns with the draft standards are about what I don't see. However, that doesn't enable you to look at the specific standards as you've requested. So within the kindergarten standards, standard 13 and also the first grade standard 9 are identical. They say know and apply grade level phonics and word analysis skills and decoding words. However, there are no examples of this. And what phonetic words or sounds are we going to teach our students? Studies have proven over and over again that phonics is the best way to produce successful learners and readers at higher levels with sight words and whole language. It leads us to issues in later years. It may produce fast readers of small books, but when you get to older levels, psychology and psychiatry, context clues and word shape would lead you to the same conclusion of what that word means. It does not allow you to actually read the word and dive into it and understand what a word means. Also within the upper level English language arts, it concerns me that grades 9 and 10 are grouped together and grades 11 and 12 are grouped together. They need to be separated. Also, number 8 within English language arts, reading, information, and literature, number 8, and then English language arts 9 and 10, number 9, are nearly identical as well. And, excuse me. It says determine. Okay. By the end of grade 11, you read and comprehend informational text. In the grades 9 and 11 and 12 with complexity, band proficiently with scaffolding needed at the high end of the range. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Russell. I'm Director of Education for the Indianapolis Urban League. I'm calling in the spirit of the meeting. I actually have some specific standards to discuss. For the record, I am a Head Start child. I haven't received welfare, and I haven't been incarcerated. So I'm here to speak for our urban students, many of whom are not represented in the room, be they black, white, or Latino. In regards to 2 ELA standards that are most important to our state, having informed citizens able to promote and thrive in our democracy, 2 of those standards have been removed. I recommend the following standards be added back to our standards in grades 11 and 12. Delineating and evaluating the reasoning in seminal U.S. texts, including the application of constitutional principles and the use of legal reasoning, e.g. in the U.S. Supreme Court majority opinions and dissents, and the premises, purposes, and arguments in works of public advocacy, such as the Federalist Papers and presidential addresses, and analyze 17th, 18th, and 19th century foundational U.S. documents of historical and literary significance, including the Declaration of Independence, the preamble to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and Lincoln's second inaugural address for their themes, purposes, and rhetorical features. These standards are not included in our history literacy standards, nor in our content standards. These standards need to be taught in our schools. And if you think about it, when people apply for U.S. citizenship, they have to look at these documents. Why should not our students?
Hanaway? Thank you. Good afternoon. I come to education in a totally different realm. I was a parochial school teacher for 4 years, so I taught an Amish parochial school with an outhouse and the whole 9 yards. I taught public school, and now I do homeschool. That was our choice. Is homeschooling for everybody? No. But I'm a firm believer whatever education works, go for it. That's what you should do. And the thing that I hear most from parents, and I get lots of calls, is that they're just frustrated because they feel like the school's not listening to them, they don't understand the standards, they don't understand all this. And I've been at the approach of taking very basic education without big, huge standards, without the big names, and students do very well. My son himself performs 4 years above his grade level, which is just phenomenal to me. But granted, he's in a one-room schoolhouse, and it's us. Of course he's going to excel really well. And there's good teachers out there that are getting bad raps because the standards don't make sense. Parents are frustrated, kids are frustrated, everybody's frustrated. I don't like Common Core because I don't like some of the premises behind it. I don't like the wording, I do feel like it dumbs down our children to an extent. I just challenge you to listen to everybody, really employ the teachers that have been out there, new and older ones. I know just from when I did my education studies, we were very much encouraged to make it a very homey, bring in the plants, bring in the, the fun, that kind of stuff to make it homey. And I know some of that's been taken out and you can't do that kind of thing. And a kid needs that security. They need to feel that they're heard. Parents need to feel that they're heard. Because if we don't all work together, our education system is going to crap. And we need to all work together and have standards that make sense, not only just for teachers, but for parents, for everybody. And I realize some of this, your hands are tied kind of like some of those teachers out there, and I feel for them. And, I just encourage us all to work together. Homeschooling might not be for everybody, private school might not be for somebody, parochial school, public school. I don't care where you get an education. I just want to see children educated, that they can go out there, and it doesn't matter what situation they're in. They have that education, and nobody can take that from them, and they can be the best that they can be because we gave that to them. So, thank you.
name is Kathleen Robeson, and I am a math teacher. I work at Fishers High School, and I'm also the department chair of mathematics there. My suggestion is just I urge you to break down the standards into subject areas for high school 9 through 12. As department chair, I also create the master schedule, and placement for incoming students can be a nightmare even from school to school within our state. Also, we also have homeschooled students that come to our high school, come to the public schools for high school to prepare for college. We get a lot of feedback from various colleges where our students attend, the major universities, and we try to, in addition to the Indiana state standards, we also try to put in what those college courses need so that they are prepared leaving our high school. It would be extremely beneficial for our current common subject areas to have the standards listed as they were in 2009. For instance, for algebra, there are 139 standards. The 139th standard is proving de Moivre's theorem, and that's been a traditional pre-calculus standard. There are no pre-calculus standards listed. They are all embedded within the algebra and function standards. In scheduling for the 2013-14 school year, the state no longer recognized or approved discrete math as a course. We dropped that course from our curriculum. Yet there are 70 standards now for discrete math. We replaced discrete math with advanced modeling. There are no standards listed for advanced modeling. We have created them. I believe Mr. Reed did a great job of doing that. But they're not listed in the current draft. The 3 measurement strands belong in geometry. They're just kind of out there, and number sense and computation should belong in every course. I could go on. I would even be happy to serve on a committee to help break down these standards. If I cannot, please consider my suggestions. Thank you for everyone for putting all their hard work into this draft.
Thank you.
Sorry. I do need to get my answer.
I apologize for the pronunciation of the last name, but Bruce Anicius? Awicious, thank you.
Close.
Hello, folks. I wasn't even going to talk here this morning. I just kind of came in as a sort of a spectator. Citizen of Indiana, graduated from Marion University. It was Marion College at the time. My grandkids, and I recognize you, my kids are all grown up. They've been very successful through the Indiana school system. Parents cared for the kids, and so we were kind of behind them all the way. Grandkids now, I've got 10 of them, and we're kind of in the stages, and they're doing well. So I commend the Indiana system as it's been, as any school system could supply to kids, understanding you have a lot of parental problems. It's a huge issue, as you guys know. The only thing I see with the Common Core is another one of these huge encroachments of federal government into state autonomy. Okay, there may be, yeah, but we get more money if we do this. Yeah, you could make that argument, that's true. But in the end, you're losing identity. You really are losing identity. If we were just if the states were just incapable of performing this function, and it took the feds to come in with Superman on their chest, well, that might be a different deal. Like a military operation or something. But we're quite sufficient in what we do. We don't need more federal socialism. We just really don't. And we're obviously in the last 100 years have been creeping that way slowly, and I'm not going to get on my soapbox there. But I'm just like to put a step in for, let's keep Indiana, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Emily Kaminish? You have 3 minutes.
I come to you as not only an educator in Indiana, but primarily as a concerned parent of early elementary children, so they're in this for the long haul, whatever happens. That isn't to imply that I don't equally care about every child's education in the state of Indiana. I'm sure that's equally important to all of you. As a hyper-attentive parent of children, it's been fun for me to look up Indiana state standards since my oldest toddlerhood. I'm just passionate about education and enjoyed the research and had fun playing all those early childhood games with him that we all know are important and reading the books to him. And I did notice one day that the standards had changed. Not working in the school system at the time, I hadn't heard of any of these things. I noticed right away that all of a sudden, granted he is a bright child, but probably no more so than everyone else's perfect child, but he was ahead by 1 or more grade level in all of these standards that previously we had been tracking, right along with. So may I make just the general statement? You've asked to speak specifically to certain standards, but the 2 days' time we've had to overview them, I couldn't possibly intelligently do so. I imagine we've seen you've had a rush on it yourselves, so I'm sure you can relate to that. The standards are wishy-washy and not better. And if it's that easy for me to see as a parent that hasn't put nearly the effort into it that I know that you have, surely you can see how that leaves many of Indiana's parents and teachers confused and honestly betrayed. I imagine you wouldn't be in the positions you're in if you didn't care about our children's education. So why does it look so blatantly to us as though it's weaker? And we hear these terms more rigorous, better, stronger, more college ready, when right off the bat I can see that they aren't. I may not be qualified in the pedagogy to go through each standard by standard, but as an intelligent person who graduated from the system and very much appreciates the education I received in Indiana, I can look ahead to my son's future education and see, especially to me in the literature standards, it's so lacking, I don't even know how to address it. The books that we read aren't even there. The books that are there in their place, I am afraid to think of what this will produce for these college-bound students in 10 years. It is not the same education I received. I would like you to consider every standard and why you did it, and to use the bravery you used when you paused Common Core, and use it now to throw the standards that were copied onto our state standards back into the trash can and do what is best for our kids, because that is your job and that is my job. And just as I respect what you were doing, please respect what I am doing as a mother, because it is important. How much have you tried to recruit us in if we don't help them with their homework, if we don't help them with their testing, but now you're telling us our word doesn't matter? All along you've been trying to get us, because what are our children without our encouragement? We're here.
You can go now. Jill Alecki? Okay, great.
Good job.
Okay, thank you. I feel weird both ways. I'm Jill Alecki. I'm a mother of 3, 1 in kindergarten. I am definitely not for the Common Core standards, and as most parents have already told you, that we don't agree with them. And Governor Pence has said that they will be written by Hoosiers for Hoosiers and will be among the best in the nation. I completely agree with that and stand behind that. Unfortunately, these draft standards show nothing remotely related to that statement. In his analysis, a pro-Common Core person, Ted Karen, commented in their relationship to Common Core that the new Indiana standards seem remarkably similar. Minor differences aside, these 2 documents are very similar in structure and substance. Deputy Superintendent Danielle Shockey said that they include a mix of Common Core and former Indiana standards, but largely will remain the same. She said teachers likely could use the same textbooks. Also, the average parent is unlikely to notice a difference between the new state standards and the National Common Core standards. She's right, because there is no difference. But what parents will notice is that they still can't help their first grader with their math homework because they're using bizarre, unconventional methods. They will notice that there are kids still reading plenty of books about volcanoes and arachnids in English class, but not reading many classics like they remember when they were young. They will notice that their child still hates reading and math homework thanks to the developmental inappropriateness of these standards. They will notice that the leaders of the state have decided that their children are acceptable subjects in a standards experiment. This set of standards has no reliable data supporting its validity, effectiveness, or psychological appropriateness. Why make our kids the guinea pigs? Thank you.
Kate Johnson.
Sure, thank you. Hi, I'm Kate Johnson. I'm with Stand for Children and also a former public elementary school teacher. So I just wanted to take a moment to first thank the Department of Education staff and the state board members and the state board staff for really focusing on this whole process that has been outlined under 1427. I know that it's been a long road and certainly a very tough process for you all. So I certainly appreciate all of the updates regularly at the state board meetings and all of the information that you've been able to put out there. So I appreciate that. This process definitely included input from Indiana educators. The evaluation process included 32 teachers, 22 of which were from both rural, suburban, and urban districts throughout the state, and 10 from higher ed, who certainly understand the importance and the impact of remediation requirements, nearly 40% of students. Regarding specific or maybe more general comments on the standards, I would encourage everybody to spend some time really cleaning up the organization of the standards to really help teachers be able to review properly and understand what their expectations are. And I also appreciate the online portal. I personally plan to use that for my specific input on behalf of our organization, and we'll also send that link to our teacher and parent members so they can provide that input via the online portal as well. So thank you all for your time and commitment to this work.
Curtis? Okay, Curtis. Mary Jean Curtis.
Thank you very much. I'm a mom here in Indiana. We've lived here since 1996, have 2 daughters. They went to Terre Haute South High School, and one was graduated from Rose-Hulman and the other from DePaul. We really happy with Indiana schools and chose to make this our home after retiring. My husband retired from the Air Force. We've been very involved throughout their whole childhood and their education all the way through college. And never once were we discouraged to give input and with the teachers. I mean, in fact, they encouraged it. And I think we all agree that that parental input is vitally important to every child. So it's just amazing to me that after 4 years of this Common Core discussion, we get 3 minutes. So think about that. It's not much. And so I ask that you hopefully be patient and understanding of the people that get up here and they're shaking, and including myself, might be pretty passionate because this is the only chance we've had. And when this stuff builds up and finally there's a tiny little opening and that's just going to happen. So I hope you'll forgive us for that. I'll try to keep mine less intense. So I do hope you'll listen carefully to our comments, even if they're general comments. Many of us are deferring to the online to give you specifics, but I would really like to focus my comments generally today, and I hope that you'll take them to heart. I have 4 grandchildren now, a 5th one on the way, and the oldest started kindergarten this year. Now, I think it's been stated that these draft stunningly similar to the Common Core, so I'm not going to address that. I'm sure other people have, but I'd like to take you back to your own meeting in March of 2009 when you approved the Indiana math standards. And it was revealed that Fordham, Achieve, America's Choice all gave Indiana standards great high marks. In addition to that, look at this. Benchmarked, internationally benchmarked against Finland and Singapore. Why in the world would we let these go? This is a beautiful product right here. and we've just dumped them for the Common Core. Secondly, you know, this business of the No Child Left Behind waiver, I understand the predicament. We have benchmarked standards. They're college and career ready. We can use the Massachusetts standards for ELA. You would have, the government would have to work hard to fight against that. We have to stop legislation through regulation. We have to stop it. Indiana needs to be the state that draws the line in the sand and says, we're done. We're taking back our rights. We are protected under law all the way since, 1960 something, that protects our rights to control the education of our students. And standards are curriculum, and they are assessments. There's no getting around that. So I beg to differ anybody who would argue with that. So, but anyway, I do want to tell you that even though it's 3 minutes, I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much.
Randy Brown.
Thank you for allowing me this time to speak before you. I just kind of want to piggyback and back up the fellow that was talking about Indiana Schools for Indiana, and also this lady too, the 2009 math standards that one of the ladies that I know is very, and more than one I'm sure, very familiar with these standards and how much effort was put into them in the 2009 study, was saying, why don't we just go to that? Because we were working on that in Indiana, and then we came along and Common Core came along from the federal government and kind of knocked that out of the water. But I'm going to make a couple other comments that are maybe a little bit unusual, but I did an exhaustive study of every word and phrase of the federal Constitution some few years ago, looking for some hint of the authority of the federal government in education in America. And I found none whatsoever, not even a wisp, if you really stretch it. Now I do find they do have all authority over the District of Columbia in the Constitution, so they can say whatever they want to about the school standards in DC, as I understand it. But on the other hand, the Indiana Constitution has a whole article, Article 8, plus many other items in their Constitution that speak to Indiana, dealing with Indiana schools. And I think what's happened in America in my life, we've had the federal government doing so many things and not very many things well at all. And I think if we would have them do what they should be doing and states doing what they would be doing, we'd all be better off. And so I would just hope maybe we'd go back to and I'm not an educator, but I graduated from Purdue University and had 3 children, not in public schools, but I'm a product of public schools. So you have a great authority and a privilege to teach the kids, and I wish you the very best. But I do think we'd all be much better off if we would follow our basic foundational documents, the federal Constitution and our Indiana State Constitution, and deal with Indiana standards. And I think that's all I need to say. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Stacy Valdez.
Hi, I just come as a mom. Now I'm homeschooling my 2 children. They were in public school last year, but I've lived out of the country for 12 years. I'm a born and bred Hoosier. I love this state. I served in the Air Force during Desert Storm. I am proudly American and yet love to be a Hoosier. We lived out of the country for 12 years. My children are Mexican Americans. They were born there. They went to public school in Mexico, where every Monday they proudly repeated their country's history and the important dates and the things that made their country very unique. I don't love Mexican education, but there were things that they were unashamed of in saying, which I think, as the gentleman talked about, reading the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, those are things that we need to unashamedly be promoting within our country, because it's what makes America, America. And our kids need to know that, lest they forget that. We get home, we moved back 2 years ago. My kids are in 1st and 2nd grade at that time. They come home with their Thanksgiving book to read. The first page, my son's reading out loud, the first page says that and we celebrate Thanksgiving in the United States in November. Next page. In New Guinea, they give thanks to whatever, I don't know. In next page, in China, they give thanks to whatever. Passing on a few pages, my blood boiling. The last page was, in America, we celebrate Thanksgiving in November by eating a lot and watching football. Now, my Mexican husband, standing in the kitchen, said, you know what? That's not true. Thanksgiving is what makes America uniquely American. My point is, we are so worried about being politically correct, culturally correct, that we have forgotten who we are. And there is a lot to be proud of. There's a lot wrong with our country, but there's a lot right. Thank you. Senator Snyder, I was at the hearing last month. Senator Snyder said that first he said that this Common Core had awakened a giant here in Indiana, that too many parents, including myself, had sat by and trusted and let the education of our children lie in the hands of other people. And he said, the Hoosiers have placed their trust in us, that Common Core has been rejecting. And if they see, when these standards come out, when this draft comes out, if they see that it's there, they're going to have a lot of angry Hoosiers. Well, once I see these drafts, I think he's right.
Rick Barr.
As a parent and Hoosier, I believe Indiana should lead the nation in education. Over the last several years, I have fought the Common Core standards because I believe the standards would not improve the quality of education, but would reduce them here in the state of Indiana. Now we have an opportunity to implement standards that would raise Indiana so that we could raise the quality of education to the best education in the country for our kids. But I do not see that happening right now with the standards that are embodied in this draft of the Common Core, which embodies the Common Core standards. So as many people have already said, most of the standards you are reviewing the draft are just repeats of the Common Core standards. I do not approve of that because I don't believe it's going to allow us to get to the point where the quality of education needs to be in the state of Indiana. Partly because of great appropriateness and partly because of the quality of the standards embodied within the Common Core. And to assist you on, because you've asked for specific examples, I contacted a friend that's a PhD in education to allow me to better quantify for you because you've asked for specific references. In the K through 5 standards, Standard 5, recognize and name all uppercase and lowercase letters of the alphabet. I believe this is an indication of great appropriateness. This counts as an acceptable standard, but kindergartners should learn the alphabet, and of course most of them will already know it coming into school. What this standard does not only tell us that the children often confuse B, P, and other letters that look alike when they are learning to read or write, but that need not be written into in a standard. As another example, I refer to Standard 17. This is another example of a cut and paste from the Common Core. And I reference this because I believe in education over the last 10 to 15 years, we've proven that whole language is not the approach we should be taking. So this is really what the standard mongers are after and believe in, the same failed method of reading that has rendered a third of our society weak or halting readers and too many people wholly illiterate. There is no reason to teach these or any other words as sight words. All genuine research in reading reveals that true phonics is the way people learn to read and alphabet language. This research has been confirmed by neurolinguists who have tracked how the mind takes in letters as the eyes cross the printed page, even for short, familiar words like sight words by the whole language crowd. So I've given you 2 specific examples of what I'm opposed to, and appreciate your time and having me come and speak to you.
wait. Kathy Boyd.
What is a standard? It's defined as widely recognized or emphasized as a model of authority or excellence. Or from a business dictionary, it states universally or widely accepted, agreed upon, or established means of determining what something should be. Well, the Common Core is hardly a model of authority or excellence. The Common Core states on one of your websites that it's a model and that it is for teachers and parents and the community leaders have all weighed in to keep to help create the Common Core state standards. It goes on to say that the students, parents, and teachers all on the same page working together for shared goals, we can ensure students make progress each year and graduate from school prepared to succeed in college and in a modern workforce. I'm sorry to say that we are not on the same page. In the standards, it repeats the phrase specifically for mathematics, that they're mathematically proficient, and then it goes on to state whatever that each category specifies as the standard. And then in the, I believe it's in the, also in the math, it says, for over a decade, research studies of mathematics education in high-performing countries have pointed to the conclusion that the mathematics curriculum in the U.S. must become substantially more focused and coherent in order to improve mathematics achievement in the country. To deliver on the promise of common standards, the standards must address the problem of a curriculum that is a mile wide and an inch deep. These standards are a substantial answer to that challenge. First of all, which countries are they referring to? If they are so great, then why aren't they listed? And if you look at our English standards, it states that you follow words from left to right, top to bottom, from the bottom of the page by page. You understand that words are separated by spaces in print. You recognize names and uppercase and lowercase letters and the alphabet. But what about the students who don't even speak English? How will they meet these standards when you stuff the classrooms full of students but not enough teachers and certainly not enough assistants to provide individual instruction and, of course, to ensure standards are met? If you look at our statistics by our own Homeland Security, 1.6 million people migrate to this country between the years of 2002 and 2006. So what's wrong with our standards if that many people are migrating to this country? I think that we have some great standards. We need to return back to those standards that you mentioned in the 2009 standards and completely dump Common Core. Stop pushing things down our throats as parents and educators that don't work, frustrate parents, frustrate the students, and make students don't even want to come to school. Just return to the basics of education, learning basic math. No, thank you.
Stephanie Carter.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Cater, and I just want to say that I oppose the Common Core for so many reasons I couldn't even begin to list them. I'm opposed to data mining. I'm opposed to math questions that are nonsensical. I'm opposed to the anti-American bias. I'm opposed to the anti-Christian bias. I'm just opposed all across the boards. And I really don't have prepared remarks. I just want to appeal to you as humans, for the people that are coming after us. We had the benefit of pre-1960s education, even if you came shortly after. I was educated in the 60s and 70s. The Bible was torn out of school in the 60s. We've gone straight down the pipes ever since. And each year there's less of any kind of decent education being offered our kids, and each year our society gets worse. So I just want to appeal to you Christians for sure, and then just people care for the kids coming up after, give them something that they can understand like we had the benefit. I mean, you've probably seen the pictures of little girls like crying at their nonsensical math problems. It's just abominable, and I don't have prepared remarks, but I just appeal to you as people, just for the next gen, the poor things. Amen.
Judy Proctor.
I just think that the whole thing, what you guys are doing with this Common Core, you're doing because you want the money from the federal government, and you're selling out our kids so the schools can get money, and it doesn't matter how the kids are educated. That's all I have to say.
Hi, I'm Stacy Berger, and I didn't come with a lot of prepared ahead of time, but just in listening and talking with people who have spent longer looking at this, I appreciate the suggestion about creating a Google document. My husband's a PhD researcher with computer science, and he talks very frequently about the benefits of open source software and what a blessing it is to our society, because you can take the best from multiple minds, put it together, and improve it, because even the best minds can be improved upon. So after hearing from other friends who've looked at the documentation, the kind of standards, the way they're laid out, the proposal would be that a Google document could be laid out with those standards, much like open source software, where there's a set time where all interested parties across the state could have input on seeing what the recommendations are, the standards, and then have public comment where there's columns where people could comment on specific standards under specific categories. This would allow Hoosiers to brainstorm together and come up with the better solution, and you could have a set window of time to allow that. That's all. Thank you.
Jacob Pachter.
Thank you. My name is Jacob Pachter. I'm an English teacher at Speedway High School, a product of North Central High School. I've taught at North Central, Warren Central, Northview High School in Brazil, Indiana. I have a master's in English from Butler and a bachelor's in political science from Wabash College. I'm an 8-year teaching veteran. This morning I gave for 3 hours an AP mock exam to 77 students at Speedway in preparation for the May exam, the May AP exam. I want to say that the conversation about standards, while important, and I appreciate the State Board having these 3 meetings across the state, misses the mark, because the most important conversation to be having is about the evaluations that we use once the standards are in place. Not that teachers teach to the test, but that the evaluations matter. So if we have Common Core, if we have Common Core state standards, if we have Indiana standards from 2000, if we have Indiana standards from 1955, it really doesn't matter if the evaluation that we use doesn't line up with the evaluations that are being used across the nation and internationally. Whether that's using PSAT data for all sophomores. Right now the state only pays for PSAT data for sophomores and free reduced lunch students in junior level. Whether that's using the PISA test that's been Massachusetts has piloted. At the end of the day, I only know if I'm effective if the evaluation at the end of the day lines up with the instruction that I've done. If the standard says 1 + 1 is 3, but the evaluation says 1 + 1 is 2, we're out of whack and nothing makes sense. So while you're going to hear, and while we all have heard this conversation about standards across the state, both things that are relevant and both things that have nothing to do with anything that happens in a classroom, the conversation that we're not having is more important than the conversation we are having. And that's a real problem for teachers, because if we don't know what's happening down the road, it's hard for us to prepare our students to be successful. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to say that I'm thoroughly against Common Core. Basically, to me, it's meddling of the federal government into education of our children. The reason I'm against it is because, as I stand before you, I am a person who has been impacted by changes in educational materials. Back in the I believe 62, 63 period, in my hometown of Urbana, Illinois, the schools were trying to gear us up to learn how to be engineers and so forth in order to get us ready for the space race. One of the things that they did is they took mathematics and started teaching us set theory. You know, for third and fourth grade kids, they don't have the knowledge to be able to learn about sets, or maybe they do, but they have to be done in the right way. So there was a lot of crying on the side of the children. The parents didn't know what to do because they weren't involved in set theory in their education. Although my dad had calculus, he had the strain to remember how to do that. I overcame all that. I was actually able to go through junior college and learn calculus eventually so that I could become a computer engineer, but it took a while to overcome that. And one of the things that I had to overcome was one summer after my 7th grade, we had to go to an educational program called Project Upstart, or Upgrade, that's what it's called. And me and 250 other fellow students had to take that course for the summer. So that's an interference into our life. That plus all the, you know, if you're already on the edge, like I was in school, I was kind of a dreamer in school. If you're already on the edge, changes in curriculum are going to push you over the edge. And that's what happened to me. So those are my comments, and I would hope that you take this to heart, that changing curriculum is not a good policy without a lot of research. And I don't think I've seen any yet.
Thank you. Thank you. I suppose people are looking at me and saying, why are you up here? You don't have kids in school. And that's true, I don't. However, I have grandkids at school. And I'd like to counter a comment that was made before about teacher involvement in kids' education. As far as I'm concerned, one of the biggest problems we have today is lack of parental involvement in our kids' education. And I also believe that Common Core is about two things: money and control. The money, I believe, the seed money from the federal government is to start up Common Core and also gain control of our kids through a standardized education program like you're considering here. The $4 billion or $1 billion or however much money that was provided for seed money will eventually run out. And then the taxpayers will have to pick up the tab. And in thinking about money and the economy, near term, the money that is involved might boost the economy a little bit, but my concern is about the economy and our kids in the future. If our kids are not prepared intellectually to advance this great country the way we have advanced before, then the impact on, say, the economy would be devastating. And so I think that the Indiana standards, I call Common Core, you call, or I think people call Indiana standards, are very, very poor, and I'm opposed to them. And also on the control, people are easier to control if they don't have the mental intellect to counter what the federal government is proposing. And that is one of the biggest problems we have today. Almost on a daily basis, things are coming out of Washington, policies, regulations that tend to control us. And that is, to me, something that I worry about greatly. And I worry about it because of my adult kids, my grandkids, and all the other kids in the country. And when we say our kids, we are thinking about all of the kids in the country. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Carolyn Roten?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today. Is it this one? Hi, I'm Carolyn Roten. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today. I'm a grandparent of a 7-year-old second grader. I volunteer on a regular basis at his grade school, something when I was working full-time I was unable to do for my own children, so I'm trying to do it for my grandchildren, since their mother has to work. I have witnessed firsthand a concern with the kindergarten English Language Arts Standard number 1. Reading it is with prompting and support, ask and answer questions about key details in a text. My grandson, if there is a picture of a dog anywhere in the book, the whole book is about a dog because he's into dogs. And he's a bright kid, but to answer some of these guidelines I think are inappropriate for that grade age level. And I think more definition or more clarity needs to be given to that. I also listen to I still work in a first grade class, even though my grandson's a second grader, there wasn't a volunteer opening in his class. So I still listen to the comprehension books that are assigned to the first graders on a weekly basis. They have to answer a simple comprehension question about that. Sometimes I'm able to help them along a little bit with what they're trying to get at in the story, but other times if they use the computerized testing thing or in the accelerated reading program to get their points, we have to do everything word for word. If they don't understand the question, we can't help them with that question. And that to me, I've seen those, I've tried to help them with those things without breaking the rules, and I just don't think that it's appropriate for a first grader level. And I've seen this firsthand. I don't know if any of you have been in school, but I have seen that firsthand, and that's a concern that I have. A general comment, just the inappropriateness of the grade level of some of the kindergarten and first grade things. Thank you.
Cheryl Ferguson.
Thank you for having us this evening. I am a pediatrician in Fishers, Indiana, and I find a lot of children are now coming to me with anxiety. A lot more children are coming to me with needing ADD evaluations. kids in kindergarten and first grade, which I used to never see. It used to be third grade, fourth grade. Now they're 5 and 6. They can't sleep at night. They're nervous. They're afraid of failing. I think the kindergarten standards are really way out of line. And I have a lot of documentation that backs that up. I'm sure you probably are all aware of this joint statement of the early childhood health and education professionals. 500 people signed this that said that the kindergarten standards were inappropriate. Asking kids to read at the age of 5 is something their brains can't do. It's very stressful for them. There's no studies that prove that reading at 5 is a helpful step for long-term success in school. This study said they've done exhaustive search looking for any research that proves that is helpful. And they found one poor study done in 1974 and nothing else since then. So basically asking kids to read at the age of 5 is developmentally inappropriate for them. Even more vital than early reading is the learning of play skills, which form the foundation of cognitive skills. That's a quote from Stephen Hinshaw, who is a specialist in hyperactivity disorders. I think taking 5-year-olds and making them sit at a computer and filling in bubbles and reading when they're not able to and taking out playtime is really causing a lot of anxiety and stress in 5-year-olds, and as evidenced by what I see in my office. Standard number 19, read a variety of emergent reader texts with purpose and understanding in kindergarten, is the one standard that I'm referring to that I think is very inappropriate. I'm really dismayed with a lot of the Common Core changes that I've seen in my daughter, who's in 5th grade. They read a lot of informational text, and I know that's a big issue. My daughter finds it boring. She comes home and she says, I'm so sick of reading these boring textbooks. And I'd make her read at home, and we read novels and we talk about them, but I feel like she would benefit from having an English teacher go over novels with her. She doesn't get that, like my older daughter did, who's now in high school. She had a much different education. She read 15 novels in 5th grade. My 5th grader has read 1, and that was only after the parents demanded it. And I just think that's wrong. It's just wrong. I really want us to go back to the 2009 Indiana State Standards are superior by many people's critiques. I think we'd be better off going back there and leading the nation out of Common Core. It's a bad place to be. Thank you.
Lisa Stump.
Hi. My name's Lisa Stump, and I am the mother of 9 children and another one on the way, so I have a lot riding on this. I want true Indiana standards. From everything that I've read so far, it looks like these new standards are just pretty much a copy of Common Core. And in my research of Common Core, it seems to me that they started with coming up with this final standard that they want kids to have when they graduate, and then work their way down. Well, you don't build a house by starting with the roof. Our kids need a sure foundation. They need those basics, and that's not being taught. I see so much of this, what my children are being taught is not age appropriate. For example, in my 1st grader comes home with tons of word problems every night with his homework, and there's tons of information in there, way too much for a child of that age to be able to figure it out. You know, they can't think abstractly at that point. And the same thing with my other elementary age children. Hardly any time is being spent on the basics. It's just quickly here, this is how you add, now all of a sudden throw these word problems at them, which is too much for them. I just want to end with, my kids are not a science experiment, and neither are anyone else's, and we want the best for them. And I don't think the standards based on Common Core have been benchmarked at all, and we can do better. Thanks.
Chris Stump.
Thank you. My name's Chris Stump. You heard previously just from my wife. As a parent, I am against Common Core. Early in this country's history, the founding fathers taught that education was important. They believed that each generation needs to be better than the next, and so education was to be taught so that it bettered our generation. Common Core doesn't do that at all. Woodrow Wilson and FDR were both adamant about tearing down the education system, but piece by piece. And now we see that Common Core has reared its head, and it is completely destroying our education system by the standards we see. The government is entangled using Common Core, and we see that through the use of money. Money entices this program, and the states bow down to it. Common Core is a food stamp to the education system, and Indiana is becoming addicted to this money the feds give to teach Common Core. We as parents, grandparents, and concerned citizens stand before you and ask that it be removed from the education system, that the standards that are to be taught are ones that bring our children up at all levels of education. We cannot have the best and the brightest if the standards that bring our children up are not taught. Otherwise, our children will suffer and they will become nothing more than slaves to the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not going to address specific standards, but just an overall problem with education. Some comments will be repeated because I think they are important. I'm against Common Core or using Common Core standards under a different name for Indiana. Per our U.S. Constitution, education is not a responsibility of the federal government. By not having very strong foundations in our Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution, etc., students cannot become good citizens. We need to teach American exceptionalism, liberty, and American culture, or our country will continue the slide towards national suicide. We will not remain free and prosperous if we celebrate every other culture but our own. There are reasons why people want to come to the U.S. Many education standards, such as Common Core, seem to be fads. For instance, not using phonics or memorizing multiplication tables. If that fad discontinues, it's too late for those students who forever lost that year in school. If parents continue to not be heard and the requested change is not made, then they should seriously consider what other educational choices they have. If public schools get their funding due to attendance, perhaps it's time for more parents to pull their kids out and to defund the beast. Thank you.
Suzanne Witten.
Well, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Suzanne Witten, the 2013 Indiana Teacher of the Year, and I'm going to have a little different of a comment to have today. As the Indiana Teacher of the Year and a visual arts educator, I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone here today and for everyone who's worked so hard to make this process possible. Working together as a team to make sure we move forward and to promote the best quality in education across the state. I personally, as an educator, like to be able to collaborate with educators all over the nation and state to educate my students with creative lessons that they will remember for a lifetime. With that being said, there may be items that we like or dislike about the drafted standards, but what is important is how we proceed and how we learn from one another. Our students in Indiana are worth it. I encourage all educators and parents to help give solutions for specific standard language. Let's work together to do this right. Thank you for all of your hard work and for everything you do for Indiana students across the state and for making their education our first priority. Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to give a 10-minute warning. We did say at the start, anyone signing in after 6:30, we would put a pause after 6:30, so it's 10 minutes before that time. So if you'd still like to speak, if you'd let us know, and then we'd love to have you up next. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah Klinger.
I'm a concerned citizen, a parent of 3 children in Carmel Clay schools. By trade, I am a financial planner, part-time, full-time mom. I'm a Boilermaker from Purdue University. I bleed black and gold, and my political affiliation is independent. I participate in every election, but I have voted for both sides of the aisle. I am a strong proponent for dumping Common Core and the draft standards and adopting the 2009 math standards that Indiana had drafted, which received great acclaim. We paid to have benchmarked and have yet to be implemented. These draft standards, which are very closely aligned with Common Core, do not address the issues that parents and stakeholders had with those standards. They leave fuzzy math, fuzzy reform math, which is a travesty and incredible disservice to our kids, completely ingrained in their educational experience. This leaves even, for lack of a better term, even very bright, mathy students literally counting on their fingers at 13 years old because they have not been exposed strongly enough to standard algorithms, to concepts that they needed to receive earlier in their mathematical education. My son is in 8th grade. He participates in math 2 years ahead of his grade level. When his teacher on the very first day of school in Carmel Clay School said, "Who in this room participates in math outside of school?" almost every student in the room raised their hand. These standards will serve to increase dramatically the achievement gap between those who have and those who have not. If you are affluent and lucky enough to either be able to pay for math enrichment to teach your children what's necessary, or your parents have the mathematical education to teach you what is necessary, you will win and come out ahead. You will be able to survive at Purdue University in a STEM program and perhaps make it to graduate school. Thank you.
Hello, hi, I'm Glenna Yale. I am a school board member with Fort Wayne Community Schools, but I'm here today speaking as a grandparent and as a concerned citizen. I just want to express how disheartened I am that the standards that have been put forth, the draft standards, so closely mimic the Common Core standards, which caused the furor and all the parents who were dissatisfied with Common Core once it got implemented here in our state is basically being regurgitated, if not verbatim, in at least 83% of the standards still remains unchanged. Who strongly opposed Common Core enough to at least put a pause so that you could take the opportunity to reevaluate whether this indeed was the direction we should take our schools in. And the fact that they just are an echo. I mean, my pastor once said, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And putting a new label on it is really not going to fool anybody, although you may feel like you will have gone through the motions of evaluating it and coming up with rigorous new standards for our state. It really doesn't fool anybody, and it's a travesty because I will tell you, when I enrolled my daughter in Snyder High School, they were just starting with a program district-wide that was called Integrated Math. Integrated Math, I took the book to a math teacher and who had taught at Harding for 30 years, and I said, what do you think of this? And he said, well, it's a little of this, it's a little of that, but it doesn't systematically teach the kids anything. Well, Common Core is integrated math on steroids. And those kids in my school district lost 7 years of math with a failed system. And now you're going to subject all the kids in Indiana to a failed, unproven curriculum, assessments, and standards because you don't want to lose a waiver. The money and the requirements of the No Child Left Behind waiver that is driving the reform in the state is tied to the college and career readiness. And the truth is, and the sad truth is, our kids would be ready for college and they would be ready for a career that, any suitable career that a parent would be proud of if we would truly give them the basics that they need in order to succeed in life instead of just going along to get along with the federal requirements. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm here to speak against the Common Core. A couple of big issues I have with this thing. Anyone who's familiar with Google search algorithm should be able to find just about anything there is out there to find, unless you're looking for closed-off search results. I happen to be somewhat familiar with those search algorithms. I can't find anything specific to Common Core that's not from some site that's very pro or against Common Core, and I think that lack of base data is concerning. Another thing I'd like to cover while I'm up here real fast is copyright. Common Core is copyrighted. And what I've been hearing from everyone else that's come up here is that these standards are essentially repackaged version of Common Core. And I would remind you of Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, a rose by another name is still a rose. Now I remember that of anything of Romeo and Juliet, of anything of Shakespeare, because I couldn't hardly read the thing. But I would warn the state that copyright infringement is a very serious problem. And if you guys do not, and if the state does not make certain that the standards that we are about to adopt are not changed significantly enough from Common Core, the amount of legal trouble we could be in, the amount of court fees we could be paying, would pale in comparison, I believe, to the amount of money, the paltry amount the federal government is going to give us after we get everything set up for the Common Core or whatever else we're going to be using. I beg you, please keep this in mind, because we do not want our education system to get dragged through a legal lawsuit by people that have very deep pockets. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jackie Roten, and I have nieces and nephews in Western Boone School Corporation. The ELA emphasis on informational text is detrimental. Great works of literature are being crowded out by the study of informational texts, which at times are even biased or factually incorrect. One article even listed spiders as insects, when those of us who have taken high school biology know that insects have 6 legs and arachnids have 8. Students need to be reading Charlotte's Web to learn to think deeply for themselves of loyalty, selflessness, greed, grief, and the power of the written word. They can study arachnids in science, but not during language arts at the expense of the literature texts, which, according to the new standards that was released, this is the sample for grade 2, and the informational text are a third larger than the literature. And it's in English class, you should be reading about literature. The informational texts, they really shouldn't apply. That should be, if that's going to be something that you think needs to be done, it needs to be done as a separate entity. like shop class. If you're going to read a manual on how to run a machine, do that in shop class, not in English class. And I was also going to mention the copyright infringement that I'm noticing, with everything being exactly word for word from the core, pretty much. I was at the evaluation, not only the orientation, but I was at the actual evaluation, the 2 little workshops that they had. And it was fun just sitting there and people not realizing that there was a person from the public sitting there, and they would have their little conversations and they would talk. And I testified on this last thing as well, but not everybody was there. So I thought I'd let you guys know again that one person actually was talking to someone from another group saying, well, we got done with our standards so fast because we just took them as they were written. They never actually looked. And I love being a fly on the wall. Just thought I'd let you guys know we are paying attention. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Crawford. I'm from Crawfordsville, Montgomery County School District. I too have been following the review of the standards. I attended the orientation meeting, and I also attended the first meeting of the review of the standards. Okay, I'm very concerned with the Indiana standards. Especially as we're going over them and we're starting from kindergarten through 12th, and the review process was to check and see if they fell in line with college and career ready, okay? Where do I find what exactly college and career ready means when you apply it to a kindergartner and through 6th grade in elementary, if they're using this term? I homeschool and have taught several elementary school children. We do have Common Core in full swing in Montgomery County and Crawfordsville schools. The children are not being taught absolutes and the basics in the beginning of their arithmetic in the elementary schools. There is daily homework that comes home with new information. Why are we learning arrays and, how to divide things up when we should be learning the basic math, addition, subtraction, division, be drilled on these, and teach the children how to solve a word problem using the skills that they have mastered. I don't see any improvement in the new standards that were written, and basically they pretty much follow along with the Common Core. The standards basically should tell you what the children are supposed to learn each year, what skills they need to have, okay? It's not a massive change that has to go over if they're still the same that they had before. Those standards are what the curriculum, your textbooks, and what the teachers are going to go by. The standards also are written because they tell you what they're going to be tested on. That's what your assessments are supposed to come from. This idea that if we don't go along with this particular new way of teaching things, that the kids aren't going to know how to read, write, and add is ludicrous. They still have to learn the basics. And this total language learning where they don't know how to break up syllables, sound words, by 2nd grade, they should be able to read the own directions for everything and be independent workers and have the teachers explaining things for them, and they don't.
Thank you. Amelia West.
Hello, my name is Amelia West. I live in Lebanon, Indiana. I'm not a parent. I'm just a concerned citizen. I am also in opposition to Common Core. It's hard for someone like me to really understand. I'm not a curriculum or standards expert. So to be honest, it's somewhat difficult to fully understand the entire conversation. I have to go based on what I'm told from parents and teachers that are experiencing it firsthand. I guess I would just like to say, as the board goes through the process, there are things that I would hope would be included in the standards and things that I hope would not be included. I'm going to speak to what I know the most about, which is the math standards. It would be my hope that in the final standards, children have the ability to be creative and that they're not forced to arrive at an answer in one particular way. Creativity is what made our country what it is today. And so it's concerning to me that children will be taught in a method that forces them to arrive at an answer in one specific way. In addition, as a society, many of us have stated that it's important that we teach our kids to have a higher understanding of STEM, or science, technology, education, and mathematics. And many of the curriculum and standards experts feel that at least Common Core does not adequately prepare our kids for a future in STEM or at a higher education institution. Lastly, I just want to mention my concern about the process. I think it's difficult for the public to come in a week after the standards have been released and make specific comments on standards. I do appreciate the opportunity that we'll have. It's an extended period. As I understand it, we have the opportunity to comment electronically on standards through until March 12th. I think that's a great idea. I would encourage all of the public to do that as they learn more about the standards and to be able to comment on specific standards that they have a problem with. I think it's very difficult for the work group to have to combine all this standard information and come up with standards, and I would not want that job. And so one suggestion that I have is I hope that the public will really zero in and focus on things that they really have a problem with, and hopefully we'll be able to do that from now until March 12th, and that then the board and the work groups can take that specific information and take out the things that the students and parents and teachers have such a problem with. So that's my last remark, is hopefully we can focus in on those things that we feel are causing us the most problems. Thank you.
We just made a flexible decision, given that some people might just be coming from work and it is only 7:15. We will go ahead and keep the comment period open all the way till 7 o'clock. So if you know of anybody still on their way, please let them know we're waiting to hear from them. And I want to say again, just thank you all for being here. We hope that you'll take us up on the online public period, tell your friends and the organizations for which you represent. We definitely want specific feedback, as our last speaker mentioned. And I also want to mention from the superintendent, who wished she could be here tonight, that she's been watching online the live stream, and she also thanks you. I just want to say formally thank you. We are going to go ahead and close this public input process. It is a few minutes after 7, and thank you again for coming.